Indiana County 911. My brother's gone. Can you be a little more specific, sir? He took my brother. Who took him? I don't know who took him. I don't know what. Sir, take a breath. Explain to me what happened.
And I looked out and there was this big red blinking UFO.
I can just say this. Something's going on in the woods. Something's going on.
They're not dogs, they're not coyotes. What could it be, right?
I had an encounter with a skunk ape, and it completely altered the course of my life.
I found a skull. I think you guys are going to want to come film this.
Put him out.
I just see it.
Sightings of a UFO hovering over a barn.
Millie woke up from a dream, and when I went into the bedroom, she said there's a monster on the wall.
They saw that the creature had run through a barbed wire fence. They were able to obtain hairs. They sent the hairs to their lab, and it came back as an unknown creature.
Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin.
What is up, Bizarreites, and welcome back to the most bizarre show on the internet. I am the one that two people now call Sasquatch. And over here next to me, I have the one that they call the big bad Boo Daddy, Orin Felix.
I really appreciate the wrestler introduction.
Daddy, chill.
Especially since we're in the midst of WrestleMania season, I think it's very fitting. So,
see, I had to amp you up a little bit. I told you I was going to get it right eventually, and now that I'm actually taking the time to make sure that we have some soundboard sound effects, it's a lot easily achieved. So we're going to start doing that from now on. I got the soundboard loaded up today with some random funny stuff that I'm going to drop throughout the show, and the way I'm going to run it is that I'm not going to tell you any of the stuff on the soundboard. It's just going to fall at the times when it needs to fall, sir.
Well, I am eagerly anticipating that.
So, kind of wrapping to roll into everything, I know first and foremost, we have a few quick updates for you guys. Orin, why don't you let them know about the very first update?
All right, so first order of business, our next Bizarre Inquiries live stream will be May 1st at 7:15 Eastern Time on the Open Minds Media YouTube channel. So you guys make sure you submit questions. It can be an article, it can be a video, just anything that you want us to inquire about. And also make sure you guys join us in the chat. We've had some really good participation the past couple months, and it's been a lot of fun talking to people and interacting as we do the live stream. So yeah, you guys make sure you do that and like, share, and subscribe and do all that internet stuff.
And if you don't come to Bizarre Inquiries, man, Alex Jones gets real mad. You hear him? He's yelling back there. He's going to freak out on you guys if you don't show up to the show.
Sleepy time right now.
Oh, he must have tired himself out. Right, oh, well. That's enough, Alex. He can just sit down for a little bit. But again, he gets really upset when you guys don't show up to Bizarre Inquiries. So I'm just letting you guys know. If you want Alex to scream at you, then don't show up to Bizarre Inquiries. But
I think Shane, wrestler announcer, and Alex Jones are like merging into the same entity at this point.
It's working, man. We're going to create some type of t-shirt eventually where it's Alex Jones, the wrestler announcer, and he's going to be announcing us. And we're going to have a t-shirt with both of us in the ring, the Sasquatch, the big bad Boo Daddy, with wrestler announcer Alex Jones. Fucking awesome, man.
I'm sure none of that is trademark infringement at all.
I mean, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but if you deny all allegations, then the question. You know, it is what it is.
All right, and what are some of our other news and updates, Shane?
So just a quick thing to all of the Patreon subscribers, just a quick heads up, the Patreon is currently under construction. I have a lot of new ideas that I'm going to be working on that are going to be coming to fruition for the Patreon in the next month or so. I don't want to play any of the cards before they're dealt because I want to make sure everything falls into place. But for anybody that is a member of the Patreon and you see that the tiers are a little bit messed up right now, that is the reason why. But in the next couple of days/weeks, you guys will start seeing stuff pop up on there that'll say coming soon. And the Patreon should be fully up and operating within the next month or so, fully back and all set up with a lot of new added benefits and features. So, for anybody that's a current subscriber, like, stick with me for now. For anybody that's not, check out where we're going to end up in the next month or so, because I think you guys will be very happy with the stuff we're putting out on that side. And kind of continuing off of that, and also continuing off of Bizarre Inquiries, for anybody that's been catching any of the live shows, I've done a couple of the live inquiries so far. I don't think we've gotten to a live Bizarre Encounters, but we'll probably be doing doing it. It'll be tomorrow now from the time this drops, so that Thursday, but I'll post it on social media. But the beginning of the week, every week, just so everybody knows, on the Inquiries and on the Bizarre Encounters Instagram and Facebook pages, I'm going to be putting out a weekly schedule so you guys will know what days the live shows will be going on the YouTube. But of course, on top of that, make sure you guys still go and follow the Open Minds Media YouTube page, and you guys select that little bell notification up in the corner so that anytime we go live, you guys will get a notification for it, quick and easy.
And if any of you guys out there want to be a guest on the show or get up with us for any reason whatsoever, Shane, tell them how they can do that.
You guys can, number one, email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of us through social media. Any form that you guys find us on is totally acceptable to do. And the last way you guys can get a hold of us is through our hotline. You guys can call or text that, whatever is easier for you guys. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that, it is available down in those show notes for you. Make it quick and easy. And every single thing that we've mentioned and will mention throughout the show is, of course, all available on the link tree. And leading into today's episode, I know that this was one that Orin was very excited to get into. I purposely did not look into this too much because your enthusiasm just got me really excited about it, and I wanted to be surprised with all this stuff that you're bringing in. So without further ado, I won't tread around water too much, man. Let them know what we're getting into today.
Yeah, so this was, like you said, one I was really excited to do. It's been a really fun one to kind of research and put together. It's going to be something a little different. It's kind of more visually based, I guess, than a lot of stuff we talk about on the show. My original intention was to cover this topic for a Bizarre Inquiries episode when we had like the YouTube live stream. But as I got kind of digging into it, I thought that there was enough material here for a whole episode. So for all you listeners out there, I have included a kind of PDF with some pictures for Shane to look at as we go through this. So maybe we can include those in the cover art or the show description or something like that. But you listeners out there, this might be one to have your phone handy with you while you listen to.
Yeah, I'll make sure that I include it in the cover art so everybody can know exactly what you're talking about. I think there's only one image on the bottom, right? So there's not too much that I'll have to include.
I've got some other images for us to talk about, but there's one main one. So
okay, well, if you got a couple of them, depending on how it plays out with the show, if there's more stuff to show, then I'll just make like a link so people can go and check out the image itself. But just a quick side note, man, I haven't heard of this one before, so I'm pretty excited about it. So hopefully this is something new for the listeners, because when it comes to this community, you see a lot of the same stuff, kind of going into circulation, people putting their spin and everything on it. But I honestly haven't seen anybody even talk about this one yet. So.
Yeah, so that's kind of why I was so excited to do this one. This is a subject that I had briefly seen years ago on an Ancient Aliens episode. And as you recent listeners will know, I was reading John Keel's The Eighth Tower here recently. And they talked about this occurrence, this situation in that book. And I was like, oh my God, that's that thing I saw on Ancient Aliens. And that led me down this whole rabbit hole. So without further ado, unless you got anything else, Shane, we will start talking about the Solway Firth Spaceman.
I'm gonna get off by cranking your knob just a little beyond the breaking point.
Daddy, chill.
Just to want to prep everybody.
Does that mean we're good to go?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm out of control. I apologize for that.
I'm not sure if that's Shane or Alex Jones.
It's just going to be a universal recording that Alex is just going to apologize for us. Anytime we get off Hinge from now on, Alex will apologize for us formally. Professionally. Very professionally.
He will be our liaison now. That's reassuring. All right. So jumping into tonight's topic. So on May the 23rd of 1964, a man named Jim Templeton took his wife, Annie, and their 5-year-old daughter, Elizabeth, on a day trip to the Solway Firth in Cumberland, England. And I was not aware of this prior to doing this research, but Firth is a British term that refers to, quote, an inlet of the sea. So, just like a little piece of water between two pieces of land. And the Solway Firth actually forms part of the border between England and Scotland. So kind of like on the bottom side of England. So during their visit, Templeton took a series of 3 photographs of Elizabeth. And after he got the photos developed, the middle photo in the series appeared to show like this strange figure wearing a quote unquote spacesuit in the background of the picture. And Shane, if you want to pull up the first image from that PDF, this is the infamous picture.
I will bring it up on the screen for anybody that is watching on the Patreon here. Boom, boom. There you go.
All right. So, Shane, since you're not as familiar with this as I am, why don't you describe to the viewers kind of what we're looking at here?
So we're looking at a little girl wearing a dress that is definitely of the time. And behind her, it appears that she's sitting in a field holding some flowers, and there appears to be a man wearing a, quote, spaceman suit, or it almost kind of looks vaguely like a beekeeper suit. Like it's the all white Teflon, or not Teflon, Tyvek almost looking suit, and there's clearly some type of like shield over the face. Whether it's netting or not, that's why I said it almost kind of looks like it might be like a beekeeper, and it also kind of looks like a spaceman at the same time.
I think that was a tremendous explanation of the photo. I'm glad you did that rather than me, since I've like looked at this ad nauseum here the past few weeks. But
I can go into more detail. There's also a beautiful blue sky with some fluffy clouds behind her too. I just add in the final detail. That's the one part of the image I didn't describe.
All right, yeah, that's really the kicker. All right, so Templeton was adamant that like when he took this picture, that the figure was not present in the background.
I think you'd notice a man standing behind your daughter when you're taking a picture. Like,
and so he said that the only people that were at the Firth that day were, quote, a couple of old women sitting in a car at the far end of the marsh. And so I've got a bit of a quote here that was attributed to Templeton from a 2002 interview. It's from a British tabloid called the Daily Mail. And this is kind of going to be just what I laid out, but it's more in his own words. So I thought it would be kind of fun to share that. So Templeton stated, quote, I took the photograph on Burr Marsh on May 23, 1964, using an SLR camera loaded with the new Kodacolor film, which was processed by Kodak. I took 3 pictures of my daughter Elizabeth in a similar pose, and was shocked when the middle picture came back from Kodak displaying what looks like a spaceman in the background. The picture is certainly not a fake, and I am as bemused as anyone else as to how this image appeared in the background. So kind of a little bit more background. After he picked up the pictures from the developer, he then, quote, took the picture to the police in Carlisle, who after many doubts examined it and stated there was nothing suspicious about it. The local newspaper, the Cumberland News, picked up the story, and within hours, it was all over the world. So the picture like initially appeared on the front page of the June 12th edition of the Cumberland News. And the article that kind of accompanied it is what dubbed this figure as the Solway Firth Spaceman. And of course, this attracted a lot of like international attention and the attention of ufologists. So do you have anything to add before we kind of move on to the next section?
I mean, this might play in maybe a little bit farther in, but just like a quick observation of things. For anybody that remembers our episode that we covered with Sam, the Sandown Clown.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. This story reminds me so much of that one. I was hoping you'd kind of put those pieces together. 1,
you got England. 2, you got right by the water. 3, you got this interaction with kids. And 4, you have these like weird spaceman type costumes, because like Sam the Sandown Clown appeared to be made of wood. Like this one's definitely wearing some type of spacesuit, but obviously there's a weird correlation with weird sightings and being near water and everything. But on top of that, it's specifically in England that there's these sightings by the water, and they're always wearing these like weird one-off suits, you know, like.
Yeah, no, that's a great piece of commentary. I'm glad you went there. You're on fire tonight between your Alex Jonesing and your picture analysis and Sam the Sandown Clown. So gold star to you, Shane.
And I'm coming.
Just gotta throw one more Alex there. Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break.
But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Bizarre Encounters on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to leave a comment or spark up a conversation. We love getting to know you guys.
And now back to the show.
All right, so now we're going to kind of jump into what I think are kind of the more bizarre, fun aspects of this case. So after Templeton's photo appeared in the Cumberland News, he was allegedly visited by 2 strange men who wore dark-colored suits and drove a Jaguar, or a Jaguar, as they would refer to it in England.
A Jaguar?
And according to Templeton, the two men claimed to be government officials, but they refused to show him any identification. And I thought this is kind of fun and interesting. They allegedly referred to each other only as number 9 and number 11. And so the two men kind of questioned/threatened Templeton about the photo.
Answer the question.
Exactly. And they even demanded that he take them to the physical location where he took the picture. And they also asked him some strange questions, like had he seen any birds in the area when the picture was taken? But anyway, when
it's a bird. It's swamp gas. It's a bird.
Maybe a sandhill crane.
Yeah, it might even be a sandhill crane.
Yeah.
I mean, ball lightning.
So anyway, when they got to the location, they kind of kept demanding that Templeton admit that this was a hoax, but he remained adamant that he did not see this figure when the photo was taken, and he had no idea how it got into the frame. So this is kind of funny. I think apparently this angered these two guys, and they drove off suddenly and left him there, and he had to walk home.
They're just so frustrated. They just
answer the question.
They're like, you know what? We're done with this. We're going. We're done.
No, it seems like that's about what happened. But anyway, so it should kind of be noted that Templeton did not believe that these two guys were legitimate government agents. And he said, and I quote, "It all looks like a leg pull to me. I'm sure the men were not security agents."
So wait, is there a difference? Either one, you can tell that they're fake because they're driving a Jaguar instead of a Cadillac, or on the flip side, maybe they got to fit with the region. How we always talk about this.
According to Keel, a lot of the Men in Black encounters in the UK, they are driving Jaguars.
That's what I was saying. It fits with the demographic, right? That is whatever the popular car is. Yeah. Because you think of government agents in the U.S., of course, you're going to think of a blacked out Cadillac. But you think of government agents in the UK, maybe you think of an Aston Martin. Maybe that's a little bit too high end for them. So, next step down, of course, you get the Jaguar. Maybe?
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit that it specifically said a Jaguar, and that's, straight out of Keel.
We should look this up to see if there's specific cars that are this should just be some random thing just to dive into, because I don't know where the extent of it would go to, but I'm curious if it's UK Jaguars, and then you'd find Germany, any interactions they have with these, they're driving BMWs or something like that.
Yeah, or a Mercedes.
Yeah, I'm curious if it fits the demographic of the country with these Men in Black sightings, and if it's universal that every single time you see one in the US, it's driving this car. Every time you see one in this country, it's driving this car. Like I said, I don't know where the research would go, but I feel there might be something there, in a weird way.
Yeah, and I do specifically remember from when I did all the research for our Mothman Prophecies series, Keel specifically mentions Cadillacs and Jaguars as the two most common cars that they drive. So, I mean, you don't hear about a whole lot of German Men in Black encounters, but it might be kind of cool to, dig into that and see if there's anything to it, like you said.
I mean, even just, it also seems it's with the time, but it's a previous thing too, in a way, because when you're thinking of agents that are driving Cadillacs in the US, you think of the 50s. You think of maybe the 60s. And I know John Keel, when he was doing his stuff, it was 60s, 70s.
60s, 70s, yeah.
And even more modern people are still describing the Cadillac. So it's kind of weird that it's
it's a timeless thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of when people are talking about the shadow people or the Hat Man thing, that they pick a 100-year span, and they kind of pick the universal for that, instead of it being it updates every year with every decade, it kind of they're all right, there's this 100-year period. This is kind of the uniform of what they wore for the most part in that. We're just going to stick it in the middle, They're 1900s, 50s. Let's just go with that look.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole thing about the Men in Black is that, like you said, in 100-year span, there's not really a time that a man in just a plain black suit's going to look super duper out of place, Yeah,
it's timelessly universal. The only thing that might change with the phenomenon as it progresses in the future is if cars themselves start to change, meaning electric cars, hover cars, if we get to that point in the future. I feel the black attire, the black dress will stay the same, but maybe the car will change with the times, Because Because it'll look weird as hell if everybody's driving an electric car or if everybody's driving a flying car and then this dude's just rolling around in a 50s Cadillac. Like,
well, maybe we'll live long enough to see if that happens.
I really hope so, because that would be a really bizarre part of the phenomenon. Because it would almost make more sense. Because if these things are extraterrestrial, bro, they're like holding back their technology. The problem is they're going to show up with like a hover car, but it's going to be like 10 years too advanced for us.
Well, we'll just have to sit tight and wait and see.
Isn't that 2045? And they're like, holy shit, is that a 2060 Cadillac? How the fuck did you get that? I don't know how to drive it. Can I have some Jell-O, please?
All right, so this is another kind of weird, cool part of this story. So shortly after Templeton's photo appeared in the Cumberland News, he was allegedly, there you go, contacted by a missile technician that worked at a base in, I believe it would be pronounced Woomera, South Australia.
Woomera. You all pronounced it with a little bit of a twist to it. You know, you got to open up the throat.
Well, that's all you, man.
That sounded a little questionable.
I'm gonna get off by cranking your knob.
Teddy, chill.
Okay. So according to this missile technician, there was this like planned test launch of a Blue Streak missile. Like Blue Streak is like the kind of missile that they were testing. But this missile test was aborted because two like strange men suddenly appeared on the firing range.
Who is that man? Answer the question.
And a few days after this happened, supposedly this missile technician saw Templeton's photo in an Australian newspaper, and he was like shocked by this because he said that the Solway Firth Spaceman looked like identical to these two figures that appeared on the firing range. But it should be noted that like no official record of this incident like actually exists. And like the only evidence for it comes like from Templeton's own account of it. But it's kind of interesting also that the missile that was scheduled to be tested was allegedly, you want to do it?
Allegedly.
There you go. Manufactured at an Air Force base called RAF Spade Adam, and it's located in Cumbria, England, which is only like a few miles from where the Solway Firth Spaceman photo was taken. And according to John Keel, the location where the photo was taken was also really close to the Chapel Cross Atomic Energy Station.
That was the next thing I was going to say. Is there nuclear somewhere around here? Because is this thing jet propulsion? Is it nuclear somehow? Like that was why I was delayed on the allegedly, is because I was waiting for you to drop something about nuclear. It was like nuclear.
So like this is, I think, the coolest part of the whole story. It gets into a lot of strange synchronicities, and also like this phenomenon of UFOs and, you know, extraterrestrials and things like that appearing near nuclear facilities and military bases. So a lot of these things weren't, you know, probably as much hallmarks of the phenomenon back in, you know, the 70s as they are now. So I think this is like a really cool and interesting part of the story to unpack.
Just to throw in a little bit of a different concept on this. Looking at the suits, don't they almost kind of look like somebody that would work at like a nuclear facility?
Kind of, yeah, like a, you know, like James Bond, Dr. No type anti-radiation suit.
Yes. So another weird thing to think about, maybe at least with this case, maybe it plays into some other stuff, but obviously if there's any issues with anything nuclear, they're doing anything weird with the nuclear stuff, like there's going to be a cover-up on it, of course. So I'm kind of curious if there was any cover-ups or any weird things that happened at this nuclear facility where, again, this is where it's going to get kind of weird, but like dealing with nuclear, obviously you kind of start touching into that, like almost like messing with other realities type thing when you start like splitting atoms and you start doing all this type of weird stuff. So like who knows what the inevitable like aftershock of that could be. So like if these guys are looking like they're wearing like radiation suits or something like that, like, is it possible that they could have been like experimenting on something and then they almost got like, I don't want to say transferred to another reality, but like somehow their like particles got like rearranged where you're seeing these people in these images, but they're not being seen in the real world, but they're like normal people wearing like nuclear suits. Like, I don't know, just a weird,
it's like some sort of mirage almost.
Not even like a mirage, but like if it like something happened where these people are existing in another plane and they can only be captured in pictures, almost like a ghost. You know what I mean?
Well, it's interesting you said that. Keep that on the back burner as we move into theories. Hold that thought. We'll be back in a flash.
But if you guys don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Inquiries of All Reality on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $1 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in merch store discounts or premium video versions of episodes, then there are a few other tiers with additional benefits and 7-day free trials available.
And now back to the show. All right, so getting into kind of theories and thoughts and things of that nature. So throughout the years, the Templeton family remained adamant that the photo captured something legitimately strange. And there's a 1996 interview with a Scottish newspaper that Elizabeth did. And again, Elizabeth is the little girl who's captured in the first picture that we looked at. And she said, quote, "We got a lot of hassle from people like you, but I was really young and can't remember much. I think it was somebody from another planet. It is pretty selfish of us to think that we are the only intelligent form of life." And kind of going back to what you just said before the commercial break, it's also been suggested that the figure in the photo could have been a ghost or a spirit or some sort of time traveler, or that the Templetons possess some sort of latent psychic powers. So this could be some sort of Stranger Thing type situation going on here.
That almost makes you wonder, though, that if there is the possibility of time travel, and that's a really up for debate thing, because I don't know if it'd be theoretically possible until we got to the next dimension up, because that's the only way that you'd really be able to manipulate time, or if you left this dimension and came back at a different point. But I guess getting into kind of the time traveler theory on stuff, assumably, if you're advanced enough in the future that you'd be able to do time travel, you'd probably also be advanced enough to try to create some type of cloaking device. Mm-hmm. So, assumably, the biggest thing supposedly about going to the past is that you don't want to alter the past. But that's up for debate, because I feel if you already went to the past, it's already happened in your timeline. So anything you do in the past has already happened in the past. So it doesn't.
I've got to jump in real quick.
Your timeline, but
I haven't done a Back to the Future joke in a few episodes. I thought the big thing about time travel was not to fuck your mother.
That is true. Definitely don't do that, especially not on accident or on purpose. Especially not on purpose. But
yeah, I feel that's just slightly worse.
It's a bit worse. But yeah, so assumably there would be some type of you probably want to have some type of cloaking device, so that say you wanted to go to these events to be able to observe history. If you can't go back to see these events, then what's the point of traveling in the first place? So either one, you got to blend in where the close of the time, or two, you got some type of cloaking facade. But on the flip side of it, if you made this cloaking facade in the future and you didn't take into consideration old world technology from certain times, of course, because you could go back to the medieval times. They didn't have any cameras and stuff like that. Nobody's going to see your cloaking device. But you go back to the 60s and those cameras worked just differently. People captured UFOs more easily on them. They captured spirits more easily on them, all that kind of stuff. So
any sort of analog technology.
Yeah. So I'm curious if possibly there could be some type of interference from the type of camera, that if that whole time traveler theory is possible, that it could be an interference of their cloaking device. It's almost when you try to record something that's has a lot of energy to it, or that's magnetic with an old camera, how it would cause the ripple in that area on the film. I'm curious if it could be something like that,
Well, almost the same idea as, you're listening to the radio and you pick up these random transmissions from, people talk about from China and shit like that. It could be the same type idea behind that phenomenon. It's just kind of electromagnetic spillover from somewhere else.
Or they accidentally were able to view into another timeline, and on that other timeline there was a massive nuclear disaster, and all these radiation guys were just walking around trying to clean this shit up.
Just trying to do their job.
They're seeing an altered timeline, man.
All right. So jumping back into some other theories, there was a photography expert whose name was James A. Conrad, and he spent years meticulously analyzing the photo. And he concluded that, quote, "Unless convincing evidence to the contrary surfaces, and it has not so far since 1964, the Solway Spaceman photograph remains unsolved and a mystery. I am inclined to support the position that the Templetons have always been truthful about this photograph and are not unreliable or incompetent observers as implied by the unstated inferences of some skeptics. I am inclined to support the position that the photograph shows an unknown entity who is not visibly present to the photographer Jim Templeton and the other 3 members of the family. And it's kind of funny to note too that after the photo appeared in the Cumberland News, Kodak had the photo examined by their analysis department, and they concluded that it was a legitimate photograph. It was not, tinkered with in any way. And Kodak even offered a cash reward for anybody who was able to prove that it was fake. So, this is kind of fun to talk about in light of, all these faked AI Bigfoot images that are, going around now. But photography experts, the actual people who made the fucking film said, no, this is a legitimate photograph. Now, what it captures is still up for debate, but by all accounts, the actual photo is legitimate.
And I mean, I even want to bring this up too. So back in 64, you got to think about film then versus now. If you were editing a photo, you were literally taking pictures, cutting them, and then splicing them back together. It wasn't just let me go on my fucking computer and splice these images together and make it look clean. The whole, all these faked images from the past of the fairies, all that type of stuff. People are literally cutting out cardboard and shit like that and putting it in the scene. So
and UFO pictures, when you zoom in on them, you can tell it was the bottom of a light bulb, or there's all sorts of those stories where these supposed, photographs of strange things are really easy to debunk with, current technology.
And the only part that kind of sucks about this image, and I'm not going to say that it's false because of it, because you can see the shadow of the girl, but it kind of falls a little bit behind her, right? Actually, I might as well bring this up so I can show you what I'm talking about as I'm going, Orin, and the listeners can look at the cover art. Okay, so can you see my mouse, Orin?
I can.
Okay, so you see how there's the shadow of the little girl right here? So that means the sun is coming from this angle. So it's projecting the shadow right here. Back here, either one, the sun is directly above them. So you're just getting just the faint outside edge of this and it just looks longer because of the photo. Or 2, there's no shadow to this man. So either one, it's the sun's right above them. And like I said, you're only getting this little bit of an outline. So that means a little bit of the outline of the shadow of this guy would be right here behind the girl's head. Or on the other side, there's no shadow at all. And either one, it can be looked at one of 2 ways. Either one, it's weird that it doesn't have a shadow because it could be a standout. It could be something like that wouldn't cast a shadow.
Or a spirit or something like that.
That's what I was going to say. Or on the flip side, if it's something interdimensional, something else, then that would also explain why it wouldn't have a shadow. And also to bring back this thing we say on every fucking show. This was 1964, dude. Nobody was making money off these pictures. People are getting ridiculed for this kind of stuff. Nobody was doing this to become publicized. You can go back to the 1800s, and the reason why all those stories popped up wasn't because of the people that were telling them. It was because all the newspapers wanted to create a story, especially for their town. 1800s creature, boom, here we go. Let's blow this up. Let's just put it in the newspaper. But 64, it didn't have that same speculation with the newspaper. And again, people were making money off of it. There would have been no
get into that later.
reason for them to fake this because clearly, from these interviews, they're annoyed of even talking about it anymore. So it's you got to look between the lines here, But that's just my views on it. It's either what you couldn't edit this photo at this time. There was no reason to fake stuff like this at this time because you weren't making money off it. And also, where the fuck is the shadow? Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that bizarre stuff you crave.
But just a quick reminder, if you would like to snag some gear from this show, inquiries of our reality, or one of your favorite creatures or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs and new drops regularly, and t-shirts for the low price of just $15.68. That's oddly specific, plus shipping.
And we're back with the high strangeness. Let's get back into it.
Okay, so we talked about some of the more otherworldly, outlandish thoughts and theories. Now we're gonna, bring it back down to earth a little bit. No pun intended. So there's a lot of skeptics that kind of are unconvinced that this picture, captured some otherworldly entity. And there's this investigative journalist and folklorist named Dr. David Clark. And he has suggested that the figure captured in the photo was actually Templeton's wife, Annie. And he actually interviewed Jim Templeton in 2002, and he later said, quote, "One of the other stills taken that day shows Jim's wife, who, according to him, was standing behind him when he took the photo of Elizabeth. I think for some reason his wife walked into the shot and he didn't see her, because with that particular make of camera, you could only see 70% of what was in the shot through the viewfinder." And Shayn, this is a good opportunity to bring up the next photo in the PDF.
Alrighty. I'm already looking at him because you're already talking about it. All right. We'll go back up to this one.
There you go. Yep. So this, for the listeners out there, it's kind of, it's the original photo, but somebody has kind of put some sort of like square framing device around the photo to show what like 70% of the frame would have looked like, supposedly what you could see through the viewfinder of this camera. And if this is accurate, you can truly only see like the very tip of the figure's elbow behind the little girl's head. So how accurate this is, I don't know. But if you look at this kind of diagram here, and this is accurate, you could see how, if you're concentrating on taking this picture of your daughter, you wouldn't see this figure in the background behind her.
I mean,
don't look at the next one yet, Shayn.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you would still there's the elbow moving there and stuff like that. I don't know. You'd still maybe see somebody walking in the background, but maybe it's a matter of like, oh, okay, that was in the background. Then later on, when you take the picture, you just completely fucking forgot that your brain even registered that. You know what I mean? Then you're just like, what is this?
Well, and it seems to me like you should have seen, even if that was the case, the figure walking from the side, like where the figure is standing, even if this diagram is accurate, there's still a lot of space, like kind of to the right of the little girl that this, or the left, I mean, either way, that this figure would have had to walk into the frame,
Yeah, again, you would have. I feel like you would have noticed something walking left or right after you took the picture. Like, oh, my wife's right there. Like,
yeah, I mean, unless it like magically appeared in the exact position when the photo was taken. And like we said, there was a series of 3 photographs. This is the middle one, and the previous photo or the subsequent one did not capture this figure. So that's kind of weird. Like, I don't know in what succession these were taken, how quickly, but it seems like if that was the case, one of the other 2 photos would have captured this figure coming into or out of the frame.
Do you have the other pictures that go in with like
I
the before
have
and
never
after?
seen the other ones, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that almost kind of like can go 2 ways of being questionable. Like, I need to see these photos to make like an honest conclusion of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the only photo you see pretty much is this one and another photo that we're going to talk about here in a moment, but it's not the same pose and setting.
So they should have, just for the sake of their argument, they should have always included those other pictures with it.
And, maybe it's one of those deals, like we said, this was the 60s. Maybe, I mean, things were much different back then as far as like the paranormal and all this sort of stuff. Maybe they just like didn't think those 2 were noteworthy. And, this one has survived the test of time and the other 2, just got thrown away at some point.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely possible too. I mean, family photo albums, man, and these pictures only last so long. Like, I mean, you see how bad these things fade out depending on where you store them at. So
kind of jumping back in, Dr. David Clark went on to say, quote, "I came away absolutely convinced he was telling the truth and couldn't explain it himself. Although I was less convinced about his Men in Black story. Whoever it was who visited him, I don't think they were from the government." So basically, like, everybody who has talked to this guy, everybody who has looked at the photos are like, I don't know what it was, but, his story seems legitimate. The picture seems legitimate. And we're going to get into a little bit about what it actually could be now. But do you have anything before we jump into that?
For sake of argument, the main person that really started writing about the Men in Black phenomenon was John Keel, correct?
Yeah, one of the first people.
Okay, so 60s, 70s is what we're talking about. So
same general time frame, yeah.
Just to give some context here, unless this, I want to be really specific. Do you know when the Mothman prophecies came out?
So I believe it came out like early 70s, but I believe the actual accounts took place like 67, 68, something like that.
Okay, so that still works.
It came out a few years after the actual phenomenon happened.
Okay, so that fits into what I'm trying to mention here then. So this guy, clearly being somebody that's probably not into the paranormal like that, isn't sitting here doing this groundbreaking research because it wasn't as prominent at the time, is making this reference of these men wearing black and jaguars. You know, if the book Mothman Prophecies or any of John Keel's writings like came out previous to this, then there would be a little bit of doubt in my mind with that. But
yeah,
the weirdness comes in that this guy is describing exactly what John Keel ends up describing years later with no context.
Well, years later, but only a few years later, the same general time period, which is kind of nuts when you really think about it.
But regardless, this guy got interviewed and said this happened before there was these writings about it. So that's kind of where like my argument falls in, that, you know, maybe people believe that he made up the Men in Black encounter because, I mean, the photo can be perceived many different ways, but just the fact that he mentioned the Jaguars and the black suits before it was really getting talked about. And again, the internet wasn't around. This guy wasn't just going online and looking up like, oh, Men in Black encounters, alien encounters. Like, it's not something that's just in the mind of the forefront unless you're looking through some really fucking obscure books in like your local bookstore or your library. So like, just for that part of the encounter, like, I don't think he would have had previous context for that. So it kind of brings some like validity into it in my mind, at least.
Yeah. Everything that I've read, like this guy was a fireman. Like he wasn't like a paranormal researcher or anything like this. Like, as far as I can tell, these were just like normal folks. They were not, you know, Ed and Lorraine Warren, or anything like that, you know?
And I mean, even on top of that, this guy is in England. You know, Keel is writing about this stuff in the U.S., and it's like, again, the times. It's not like the internet was like, oh, read this person's book. Like, I don't think this guy would have had any reason or context to be like, oh, I had this weird experience. Let me find this book called The Mothman Prophecies. Like, I don't think there wouldn't have been a connection to that. You know, like this guy is clearly like describing something that is already a talked about phenomenon with no previous context of it.
So I think all those are good points. We're going to bring up a few counterpoints now. So we just talked about how, you know, this Dr. David Clark theorizes that the figure is just the wife who walked into the background of the frame. And you might be asking yourself, well, this thing looks so weird. Why? You know, how could that be? So they say that Annie, the wife, was wearing a light blue sleeveless dress and she had, quote, dark bobbed hair, and that apparently due to overexposure, the whole figure like ended up appearing white. And kind of people who are proponents of this theory, they point to the other photo which was taken that same day that shows Annie. And that's what you've got pulled up on the screen now. And you can kind of see in this photo, she is wearing a light blue dress. You can see like the arm, like the armholes, I guess.
Yeah.
And parts of the photo do look very washed out and white. So this is, you know, kind of an interesting picture to look at in regards to the whole overexposure made it look like this spaceman theory. Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on?
I'm going to have to see it in a little bit more context because I'm assuming there's another one that's below it. But I don't know. I'm going to have to look at it a little bit closer before I give any opinions on this one.
Okay, so we're going to move on to like a different photo analysis, but this will kind of give you more of a flavor for this whole thing. So it's also been said that when you use photo software to like darken the image, the photo or the figure, increasingly appears to like just look like a regular person viewed from behind. And that when you mess with the contrast, you can like clearly see the neckline and the armholes of Annie's dress. And that's this picture here. So on the left, we've got the original. And again, how legitimate this is, I don't know. But on the right, you've got kind of the souped up photo where they've like played with the contrast and all that. And if you look at that photo and the previous one of Annie, where she's kind of sitting on the ground, you can kind of see the armholes. You can kind of see the dress. I mean, you can't see her hair in the top one, but just a little bit. But I mean, it kind of looks like that jives and makes sense if all of this is legitimate, you know?
I'm going to try to look at this a little bit closer. I'm going to go to the bigger image just to see if we can like see it in this image, because this one looks like it's a little bit better quality here.
Yeah, so like the main image that you always see, the figure like almost appears to be completely white, except like you said, you can see like a neckline almost. And it does appear to be some sort of like helmet or mask type apparatus that it's wearing.
All right, let me go back to the other image.
Scroll back up. Scroll over a little bit to the right. So I didn't notice this until we were just looking at the picture blown up. You can see what appear to be birds like in the top right corner of the picture, which kind of makes sense.
This might be something on the lens because it is an old camera.
It could be. Yeah, that's very true. It could be. But, you know, I always thought it was a weird kind of question that these men in black asked him, did he see any birds? And I never noticed these spots, whatever they are, in the top right of the frame until we just blew it up.
That is in the other pictures, too. I don't think that's birds. It might be something.
Yeah, I think you're right. After looking at the other ones, it does look like just some kind of film quirk.
The only thing that I will mention about the picture, but I will say that it is pretty damn close, but the only thing that it could just be a matter of like an optical illusion or not, but if you look at the image and you kind of zoom in a bit, and let's go back to this one, we'll go to the big one again. All right, looking at the thing, it looks like there's something right here around like the neck, and it doesn't appear that that's on the dress itself. Like it almost kind of looks like a hangover or something like that. And also, this also kind of looks like a chest, but on the other side, could it also be somebody kind of like hunching forward and it's actually the like protruding parts of your back that are almost just at that perfect spot where it almost kind of just looks like pecs of a chest?
See, but I almost think if this is the wife or a spaceman, it to me does look like it's capturing the figure from the back, just like how the arm is situated. That looks more like a position that would be like viewed from the back and not from the front. But maybe that's just, you know, in light of I've seen the other pictures, you know?
You know what I'm going to have to chalk this one up to? I'm going to have to chalk this up to a 1964 version of the blue gold dress phenomenon.
Yeah, you can see whatever you want to in it.
Because you can see whatever you want to in it because it definitely looks like the dress. And as much as I like to jump into like the theories of like the paranormal and everything like that, the picture definitely looks like his wife. But on the other side, the other weirdness comes in with the other experiences and encounters. Either one, the guy was straight up lying and trying to cover his tracks because he already felt ridiculous, which everybody's kind of been in that position at some point. So I'm not going to he's already in for an inch. Like he doesn't want people to start like calling him false, so he just starts adding more to the story. So like that's definitely a possibility. Or on the other side, you know, maybe there really is something to it. Maybe he really did experience these Men in Black encounters and stuff. Like honestly, after seeing this photo back and forth, my guess would be that he said he had something weird. People started diving into it. He got a little bit too far into the hole, and then he kept like expanding on it. But there's still something in the back of my mind that's saying this guy was making the reference to the black suits and the Jaguars. So like I would basically assume that this whole thing was unintentionally a hoax. Unintentionally. That got out of control. But the only weird part to me in the back of my mind still is just the Jaguars and the description of the Men in Black.
And I think that is a fantastic place to pause before I share my final thoughts and conclusions.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And we are back to the show. Let's hop right in.
All right. So, yeah, kind of like you were just saying, Shane, I'm pretty much completely on board with you. I think the two most compelling pieces of quote unquote evidence that support, this figure being some sort of otherworldly entity are the Men in Black encounter and the aborted missile launch. But, each of these things are kind of supported only by Jim Templeton's own testimony. And therefore, obviously, you got to take them with a lot of grains of salt. And something else that I didn't mention at the top of the episode because I wanted to get through everything. So Templeton was like known locally as like something of a photography buff. And he was also like a local historian. So, this could be a situation of where, he knew a good story when he saw it. At the end of the day, I think the most likely explanation is that it was just Templeton's wife that walked into the frame and he didn't see her at the time. Like you said, I don't believe they were necessarily trying to perpetuate a hoax, but I think once it started gaining notoriety, he saw the value in this story and they just kind of ran with it and started like actively promoting this quote unquote mystery. And it's also been suggested that, Templeton, like I said, he was known locally as something of a photography buff, that he probably would have figured out at some point in the years after this what had gone on, but because of like public scrutiny and fear of being ridiculed, he just kind of kept his mouth shut, which we talk about all the time on the show, people not speaking up about something that happened to him for fear of ridicule. This is kind of the opposite. He claimed that something did happen to him and then maybe figured out that it didn't and didn't say anything because of ridicule. So I think that's kind of funny. And why I was so excited to do this one is I think this just highlights so much of the stuff we talk about on the show. It shows how two things can be true at the same time. It shows how stories can become exaggerated and distorted throughout time. And it shows like folklore being created in real time. I mean, we talk all the time about, Wendigo lore or, vampire lore and things like that go back hundreds or thousands of years that we have this whole like cultural framework for. This is something that basically just happened, a blink of an eye ago in, astrological terms. And so we're seeing like this story growing and being created in real time. So that's, kind of part of the reason I wanted to share this, because I just think it highlights so many cool things we talk about on the show. And it's like you said, it's not a story that I've heard on a lot of podcasts. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about.
I mean, just to throw in some other ideas on this one too, just so we don't sound like we're talking bad about this guy. Like, I don't think that, like you said, I don't think he did this intentionally. I think that he had a picture, he thought it was interesting, and then once everything started rolling, he kind of just went with it because he didn't want to be called out like, oh, you're a hoax, you were faking the whole time, because that wasn't necessarily the case. So it's just like, once he got rolling, he kind of got like stuck in that position. But on the other flip side, you mentioned... became,
the spaceman photograph guy.
Exactly.
That's what I was be when you're not the spaceman photograph guy.
That's what I was going to mention too. You said that this guy was also a local historian. So, every historian wants to become part of the history,
And he did.
So, I mean, does it seem that far off that this guy had an interesting picture and said, oh, cool, like I might end up... Well, it could be one of two ways. Either one, he hoaxed the whole thing because he wanted to be part of the history, or two,
I don't think so.
He got the picture. He said, "Oh, this is cool. Like it's going to become part of the history." And then it started rolling. And then after that, he was kind of like, "I still want to remain part of the history." You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think, like you said, I don't think this was hoaxed in any way. I don't think they planned this. I think it was just kind of a freak occurrence thing. And I think probably legitimately at first they were freaked out by this. They didn't realize what had happened, but I have to think somewhere, in the interim, they probably kind of put two and two together and was like, yeah, that's probably what happened. Like, I was kind of like you, I was all in on this. And then when you start kind of seeing the other pictures and the explanations, it becomes much easier to be like, yeah, it's probably an Occam's razor situation. Simplest solution is the correct one. It was just his wife, but it's a super fun story either way.
I mean, it's still also like a thought experiment or like a philosophical experiment, though, because diving into all this phenomenon, whether you prove it or you disprove it, you still just ran through hoops and hurdles in your mind, exercising all different possibilities, all different.
And they all made sense.
And they all make sense. So like at the end of the day, it's like, you know, people will see something and say like, oh, this is false. And they just throw it out and they feel like they're wasted their time. It's like, no, you didn't waste your time because you just did the process of process and elimination. You did the research. You came to a conclusion for it. And in turn, you now are better at investigating the phenomenon just simply because of that. Like, you know, it's always a good thought experiment to be able to get into some irrational thought, but still be able to bring it back to rational thought by the end. You know, like it's just... It's good for the sake of research, you know, like whether it's true or false, you know?
Well, and that's why I purposefully kind of formatted the episode and the information like I did. I wanted to lead with all kind of the craziness and then kind of, you know, bring us back down to earth and deflate the balloon a little bit here at the end. But
that tends to be how we go on the show, is that we start getting into these ridiculous theories. And then by the end, like you and I are very logically minded, where it's like we think of all this quote irrational stuff to most people, but we form that conclusion through rational thinking. And then when you get to the end and there is no rational thinking other than like, yeah, this
something weird happened. Yeah.
Then it's just, you know, it's a good spot, you know, like it's a good way of doing things, and it's a good way to like rationalize the things. And be like the way that we research between the two of us, like I said, we'll get crazy with some stuff, but we always bring it down to what I feel, in our definition at least, is the most rational explanation of any phenomenon that we investigate.
Yeah, and this was a fun one to do because it's something that we basically, you know, through my research and us just talking about it, we kind of debunked it in our own minds as we went along. So, I mean, for all you listeners out there who might think we get a little off the rails and, you know, just always are talking about portals and time travel and stuff like that, you know, we can be capable of saying, nah, this is probably just a normal, totally explainable thing that happened. And this is one of those cases.
Hey, another prime example in an earlier episode that I think was one of my favorite conclusions that we came to, because I still haven't heard anybody mention it. I'm brain farting on the name of the creature. It was from North Carolina, the thing that was like eating things and crushing their heads.
The Beast of Bladenboro?
That's it. Yep, the Beast of Bladenboro. By the end of that one, we got to the fact that around that time, everybody had pet hyenas. And then all of a sudden, they made it illegal to have pet hyenas, so everybody let their hyenas out. And then when you start actually looking into how hyenas eat things, they'll like crush the skull and everything. So it was like... that, I feel like we came to the most rational explanation on that one, too. I think it was just somebody's pet hyena that they let out because of the laws changing, and it just went to town on some livestock for a little bit. But it became this whole crazy thing of folklore that everybody's still like, the Beast of Bladenboro, the Beast of Bladenboro. But at the end, it's like you look into everything at the time, and I feel like there's no other rational explanation other than it was just it was a hyena.
It was something totally normal and explainable,
which sounds irrational now, but back then it was like, dude, like who is it? Teddy Roosevelt had a pet hyena. Like it sounds ridiculous, but like it was a normal thing then. Like,
of course that motherfucker did.
Dude, he took that hyena with him to go cryptid hunting, man. He tracked down the New Jersey Devil with that fucking thing. He used to also, just another fun fact, because I find this hilarious, he had it trained so well that it was like, it would follow him around, it would heel, like it would act like a dog for this guy. But he used to do this thing, apparently, that he was famous for, where he had somebody new that would come to the White House, and he would just let the hyena into whatever room they were in, give him a fucking heart attack, and then come in and be like, heel.
Man, don't let Trump hear this story. He's damn sure going to have a pet hyena.
People get mad about Trump and all these like eccentric presidents. Like, bro, look into Teddy Roosevelt. Like, that dude was the most eccentric motherfucker ever, but he sounds like he would probably be the most fun person to sit down and talk to at a party.
I still think you need to do your Teddy Roosevelt cryptid hunter episode.
Dude, I will do that at some point. I'm going to make sure I put on the list, because I actually have a list going here now for episodes that I want to cover, but like... oh my God, man. Like, if I could go back in a time machine, I would just go on like a hunting trip with Teddy Roosevelt. Like, they tell me that would not be the experience of a lifetime. I feel like this would be the type of dude who'd be like, you want to see something funny? And he'd just throw like a stick of dynamite into the fucking woods and just give everybody a fucking heart attack and be like, I don't know what happened. It must have been a Sasquatch.
Well, while you're time traveling with Teddy Roosevelt, if you run into the Solway Firth Spaceman, tell him I said hello.
Dude, Teddy Roosevelt and I, if I go back in time, I'm going to have a whole conversation with this guy. Everybody thinks that he died. He didn't actually die, man. He went off on adventures with me to go and hunt creatures through time. And the reason why we haven't been able to catch up with Sasquatch, we haven't been able to catch up with any of these creatures, is because Teddy Roosevelt and I went back in time and we took all of these motherfuckers out for you. Well, mainly Teddy Roosevelt. I wanted to research, he wanted to kill. I can't help him.
Okay, I've got no good segue back into the material, but I do have...
me. I'm sorry. I'm out of control. I apologize for that.
I figured Alex should formally apologize for us.
Okay. I do have a couple quotes that I want to share to kind of close this one out. So this first quote comes from rationalwiki.org. And it says, quote, Templeton's lifelong claims were technically sincere. There was no one else with them that day, and he really didn't see anything other than his daughter when he took the photo. And the photo wasn't manipulated, faked, or staged in any way. And I thought this was kind of a fun quote, and it just showed, again, stuff we talked about on the show, the power of perception and how two things can be true at the same time, and how most experiencers like actually truly believe what they're saying.
Not to mention the fact that I've been diving like heavily into psychology lately, and I'm sure this kind of goes without saying, but for anybody that hasn't like put the two and two together, you experience something, you see this image in your head, you have your perception of it, and every single time that you retell that story, you rethink about that story, you're just solidifying it more in your mind. Meaning that like there may be like, say I saw a Sasquatch and this thing had these giant sharp pointed teeth. Every single time you tell that story, your perception is being changed in your own mind to start fitting
like fishing stories.
Your own narrative. Yes. So it's not even that you intentionally dramatized your story, but rather that each time you tell it, if there's a little piece that gets stretched, even if you don't realize it, that is now part of that in your mind. So you end up warping your own concept of your own experience by retelling it and solidifying it in your own mind.
No, I think that makes perfect sense, especially, with these like crazy, weird, scary encounters that people have with like Sasquatch and things of that nature.
Yeah, because you re-see that image, it gets burned in your head, and it's a trauma experience on top of that. So again, that trauma experience always gets over-exaggerated in your own mind, of course, because it's from your own perception. So it's like, regardless of what you do, like it's not even just playing telephone. Like you alter your own perception unintentionally, subconsciously.
Yeah, like I said, perception, it's a powerful thing in, all walks of life, but especially in this kind of situation. Stay tuned, guys. This is our last break.
But if you guys enjoyed this show and think we deserve it, please leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify or any other podcatcher you use. Your continued support is what makes this show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. So thank you guys. Now feel free to skip past these ads so we can get back to the show.
And now we're getting back to the bizarre. So the last quote I'm going to leave you guys with tonight, it's from Dr. David Clark, who we talked about earlier in the episode, and it comes via bbc.com. And he says, quote, "People now are much more cynical about these kinds of pictures. Back in the 50s and 60s, you got a few grainy stills showing extraordinary things. People were much more surprised and willing to suspend disbelief. For me, it's one of the most impressive anomalous images in supernatural investigations, and people will still be talking about it in another 50 years.
It's the 1964 version of the dress picture.
Yeah.
That's literally all I can see now.
A great place to leave off. I mean, that's kind of our whole conversation tonight in a nutshell. So, like I said, this was a super fun one to do. I haven't fallen like this penis deep into a subject in a long time.
Daddy, chill.
Yeah. I've got no chill. But yeah, so this is a fun one, Shayn. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the listeners enjoy it. I know this is kind of an oddball thing that a lot of people haven't heard of, but I think it's a really cool story. And
that's what you want to hit.
I enjoy doing it, so I don't care.
You want to hit some oddball stuff for people because, like I said, there's the main cryptid you want to cover. You want to give your own viewpoints and everything like that on it. But when you once in a while just find these obscure stories that nobody talks about, like this is the prime stuff that you want for the show, man. Like I love this kind of shit. Like if you find just little obscure stuff like this, like let's just start hitting this. That's what I try to do with the Michigan episode, and I guess that's the niche, man. You just got to find shit that nobody knows about.
Well, we've talked about a lot of the cryptids. We've talked about a lot of alien stuff. We've talked about some conspiracies. At some point, you just got to find some weird stones to unturn, and I think this is one of those. So that's all I got for you guys tonight.
And on that note, if you guys enjoyed today's conversation and you guys want to show some love, smash that follow icon and share today's episode with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners just like you guys is exactly how the show grows. So again, thank you guys.
And if anybody wants to get in touch with us for any reason whatsoever, you can do that through what, Shane?
You can email us at bizarreencounters@outlook.com. Or you guys can get a hold of us through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that we're the most active on. But if you find us anywhere, just shoot us a message and we will definitely get back to you, of course. You guys can also get a hold of us through our submission form, which is available on our Linktree directly up at the top, so you guys can find that one quick and easy. And the last means of being able to get a hold of us is to call in to our hotline number. And that number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that, it is available down in the show notes, so you guys can find that quick and easy.
And you guys, please be sure to check out our friends and sponsors and show them some love. We've got I Know Squatch for all your squatchy gear needs. We've got Snarly Yow Natural Products. Our buddy Dave, he's making some great body wash and beard oils and things of that nature.
A lot of crazy new events going on this year, too. So everybody recommend checking into them because I think he's got 2 new ones that he's starting. One of them is a hot rod show for hearses that I just want to throw out there. So take the opportunity when you got it. Check out the awesome stuff Dave's doing because all the events are usually free too. So I just had to throw that one in there.
Hot Rod for Hearses is like the best name for an emo band ever.
Hot Rod for Hearses. Hot Rod Hearses. It almost kind of sounds like it'd be like a goth alternative band.
There you go. We should start one. So also, you guys check out Joe at Cryptoteology for all your webbable cryptids and also Big Ape Threads.
I'm just going to take a moment to say that I appreciate all of those little remembrances of the past episodes.
And it's a steel trap up here. Once it's up here, it's not gone unless I'm drunk.
I don't feel like I could get rid of it now. I just wrote in the words in the notes for just the direct sponsors, and you just did that all naturally. And I appreciate the fact that you remembered all of it.
Yeah, all natural. That's how I keep it.
And on the other end, if you guys want to check out our awesome friends with affiliate links, we got Dimension Devices over there making some awesome paranormal investigating products. Previous guests on the show, of course, you guys can always go back and check out that way in the past episode. You guys can also go and check out Oregon-ite, and the last one you guys can check out is Sticker Mule, and we of course have additional discounts and credits available, and all more information on those is available down in the show notes. And every single thing that we mentioned throughout the show, of course, is all available in the Linktree, which is available, again, down in that show description. And with that, I have been the one that they call Shane Squatch.
And I have been the big bad Boo Daddy, Orin Felix.
Daddy, chill.
And like I tell you guys every single show, and just like that last guy who, the whole show, he's just telling Daddy to chill. You guys, always, always stay bizarre. Bizarre. Bizarre.
The dress is white and gold.